real conversations, and some hard truths. Gangs, drugs, and guns. Giving a voice to those willing to sacrifice. We have stories that need to be told. We have lessons that need to be taught. Protect and serve. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. Nathan Romas with you. Today I have the Chief of Police, Dale McFee, here from the Edmonton Police Service. We're going to discuss the state of policing in Edmonton and, to a smaller amount but broader context, Canada. And we're going to talk about his recent announcement of retirement, which is coming up in February of 2025. I think I got that right. So welcome, Chief.
Welcome. Thanks, Nathan. I appreciate the welcome. And it's always good chatting with you, buddy.
Yeah, I'm happy to get you on here. We got a few interesting topics we're going to get into today.
I can imagine you usually do.
There's always something going on. So policing's never dull, especially not in your world. But we're going to start by talking about the U of A, or University of Alberta encampment, the investigation, and then the outcome. So the results were put out end of October, beginning of November. No charges. Things didn't meet a threshold of serious injury, is what was said. So I just kind of want to get very broadly, what are your takeaways from this whole event and kind of the outcome of it?
Well, I think first and foremost, I saw the video footage that we took with some of the drones and some of the camera footage we had, and I was pretty impressed just how effective our folks were. When you actually look at it on a time frame piece, our folks went in and they removed that encampment in a very short period of time. It was nice to see the province, do the ACERT follow up, and they basically said that none of these injuries that were reported actually could be verified, and I don't think we were surprised by that, honestly. Mm-hmm. But they also saw that a lot of the social media that folks were confusing, the differences between Calgary and Edmonton, and they were reporting different things. And I mean, overall, we all know what happened there in relation to it. I mean, it wasn't really student-based. It was obviously some professional agitators in there as well. And I think the results showed just as the ACERT said. But, I think there's a lot of lessons learned, not just for police. I mean, certainly we had politicians and others that were trying to wind that up into being something that it wasn't on social media in particular. And, those are the things that, quite frankly, I think it was 11 members of our team doxed. I mean,
yeah,
people lost the plot. Like, that should not be acceptable today when you put people in harm's way for actually doing their job and doing it well. And, there's others that need to bear that responsibility. And, I'm hoping at some point, with the investigation ongoing there, that maybe we can actually find out and try to hold some of those people accountable, because, our whole methodology behind when we deal with these issues, whether it's that or any type of protest or demonstration, we're policing behavior, not beliefs. And let's be very, very, very clear on that. We respond to the behaviors, not the beliefs. And people have the right to protest, but at the same time, not at everybody else's expense either. So it's we carefully, obviously, mitigate that and plan for that. And first and foremost, very happy with the actions of our team and just how they did that so quickly. And obviously with minimal impact to folks in the area, and certainly without injury, as we're aware of it even today.
Yeah. And I wonder too, is there anything out of any of the debriefs where so I'm going to ask about the police side first. Anything out of the debriefs where we think we should have done something different or could have done something better? Is there anything? And I ask that just because I know a lot of planning goes into this. A lot of consultations go in, both legal and with tactics and different things. So I'm just wondering, was there anything on our side of it that we're like, we should have done different?
Yeah, you know what? Well, as you know, we review all of these, and actually, it was pretty darn good. I mean, if you're on the other side, you get people saying, "Oh, we should have did it during the daytime so we didn't have to wake people up." But I think those people didn't realize that everybody in the encampment was awake when we got there. So,
Mhm.
I mean, you're not going to make people happy. All of our decisions are made of what's the safest place and the safest time to do that, and what's the best way to do it. And I thought in this one they did a great job. And anything that I've seen today is hasn't had a lot of recommendations of things that we need to do different, because even the ACERT evaluation of that particular review of the events kind of hold the same as what we see. So, I think it was as there's never such a thing as a textbook, because everything has a little bit of hiccups. I guess one of the things that I would have hoped that maybe some of the people that decided they were going to resist, even though it wasn't real hard resistance, it's still resistance, and some of our members were assaulted. I was pretty disappointed that the prosecutions, those charges didn't go forward. Obviously, they have a
Mhm.
different litmus test than we do, but that was a disappointment. But the whole thing honestly could have just been diverted if the people there that were actually protesting or demonstrating like they would have, if they would have took the third, the fourth, or the fifth warning before we came in. And I'm not sure if people didn't think we were serious, but credit to our partners at the U of A and the security there for giving the appropriate warnings and doing their part to show that it was a true partnership and it wasn't just a police event.
So, kind of on that, and you partially answered this already. For the public side of things, like if you can give a message to them, the people out there, outside of the professional agitators that are in these crowds, but the public in general, like what would be kind of the advice to them? And I'm just thinking along the lines of maybe we can have better discussions about things at some point along the way instead of just going straight to we're going to occupy a space. So what would be kind of the advice to people of the public?
Oh, well, I mean, the advice is, basically it's the behavior, right? I mean, if you're intimidating or you're causing a problem, whether it's on any type of property where, it's not wanted or it's crossing the line, I think people got to respect that and they got to follow the laws. And that's number one. And I think in response to after the fact is, you know, probably try to get the truth versus just jumping on to some of the hype that sometimes comes out in social media. Sometimes it's a spliced video, sometimes it's a snapshot of a video
Yeah.
that actually is a lot longer duration. But I think people should realize that when we go into those events, we record them. I think we've done a lot better job of that lately. We obviously have our
Evidence gathering team.
evidence gather team.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's following that, as well as we've used drones and we've tried to capture this whole process so we actually can review it. But the 20-second telephone trying to show up the worst of the worst that was actually no more than 20 seconds. In duration, sometimes doesn't do anybody any good and creates this whole, how would you say it, activist
Hmm.
potential thing that's sometimes misdirected. And I mean, it's no different. If we're responsible in something we did, we need to be accountable. But
Mhm.
that is something that we look at, and we have lots of things to look at it from.
Do we know, are people getting outside bad counseling? Are like, do we actually have any info that there's someone, if it's on the legal side, that they're getting bad direction saying, yeah, you're within your right to set up tents or whatever it might be outside of the 20-second clips? Like if your counseling is 20-second video clips or whatever it might be, like, yeah, you're doing really bad. But
I think people got to realize that you know we always give warnings,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm not sure how many warnings it takes before people get the message that action is going to be taken. And I think people just got to understand there's a reason for those warnings. Is you hope that people through their own device will figure it out that it may be time to leave that space. And for the most part, when you look at the U of A, most of the people did leave, so that's a
Hmm.
good thing.
Hmm.
Yeah, and they were coordinated in how they left, and the ones that stayed, they weren't leaving. And and then they're dealt with in a different manner, which we certainly can do if need be.
Yeah. Now, just talking really big picture here, just because I came back from the last couple days, I was in Vancouver at a conference, and I'd listened to the mayor of Port Coquitlam, Brad West. He was talking about like foreign influence on some of the local politics and stuff. However, when we're talking about protests here in Edmonton, we're talking about professional agitators being in crowds. I kind of want to get your thoughts around the impact of all this geopolitics coming down into Edmonton, and how exactly are police services in Canada outside of the RCMP? So we're talking municipal services. How are they kind of learning about this, and how this is impacting the police service? Because there's no specific courses or anything I've ever seen for members. So I'm just wondering, is that something that's going to be coming down the pipe? Is there some kind of education piece of this? But how are police services looking at dealing with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit something obviously that's really come onto the radar in the last couple of years is the geopolitics and the impact of that. Um, Matter of fact, we just gathered as the 9 largest municipal organizations in Toronto here about a month ago. And then we obviously invited the Sûreté Quebec, the OPP, the RCMP, Halifax, who obviously is, a capital city. And we talked about, the impacts of protests, demonstrations, the impact of the geopolitics, and we talked about the costs in relation to it associated with these services, and it's significant. I mean, you're looking out in Toronto. I think they're up and around that 1,500 protests. Vancouver maybe 1,200. You come to Edmonton, and
Wow.
We're getting pretty darn close to 700, and Calgary's very similar, and and the list goes on. So we're looking for things that we can do to deploy effectively. How do we actually deal with this? Some of the best practices that we're seeing out there is something that we do very well, and actually was spoken to at this meeting, is our liaison program. That front end program, building the relationships, trying to lay the ground rules down up front. Back to the point of we police behaviors, not beliefs, and we realize that we can't take the Israel-Palestine conflict. We can't fix that over there, but what we can do is make sure that on our streets, that those demonstrations are peaceful. I mean, everybody's hurting. We get all that. I mean, I don't think anybody's not seen that. I mean, we have employees that probably, well, not probably, that sit on both sides of that. And it's not easy when you see that happening, when you have family over there and stuff. But we have to make sure that they understand clearly that any type of violence on the streets of Edmonton aren't going to change it over there. So let's be very clear up front. So that's been one thing. The other thing is making sure that different deployment models, understanding what some of the issues are. Like to think, when we're getting in that 600 to 700 protest range, there's things that are being protested that we clearly don't understand. So that liaison part is critical to that knowledge base. And then I think, as you mentioned, scaling appropriately with the UOPs based on size, based on what we pick up, whether through intelligence or through other police agencies, what's happened in their jurisdictions, I think is absolutely critical to mitigation of these things. And and then also to the last point is being aware that what's happening around the world right now, because Canada is a very diverse country, and certainly the immigration policies have changed in Canada. And we've got a whole raft of immigrants, and I want to be very clear to say nobody blames that on immigrants, but it does make it understand that with those changes we need some planned things from the federal government. It just can't be a free for all, and because otherwise you just don't know what is coming or what could be here now. So I think there's a lot more upfront planning by that level of government that needs to be done. And that's ultimately, that planning is what's going to be the key to ensure that it's try to keep things peaceful, because with every bit, when one more is added, there's more risk. And being that there's different changes to that policy, I think you need to make sure you have mitigation strategies. So we are on that. yes, we talk about that at CACP. We talk about that at major city chiefs, which I sit on the board of both. So in the
Okay.
US, because a lot of that stuff flows, I think it's something that right now has probably been one of those top three to top, probably top three actually things that we need to pay attention to and make sure that
Mhm.
we understand what's going on. And I think as those larger services, we're starting to do that much better. And then that's got to get translated into frontline deployment, how we handle it, how we do this, and put as much work in on the front end as we do in the back end, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of bad actors out there that are always testing. They're trying to test us as law enforcement, right? Because they're looking for bigger and better things that they can do on their end. The one thing that I do kind of wonder about too with some of these groups that go out and do the protests is why we don't see them calling out the bad actors very much. And I think that would go a long way to drawing people to their cause, possibly, or at least listening to them. But when you go out to the protests, and there's always like a small group will just kind of latch onto the bigger one, and then they're there with some different intentions. But if we go and deal with that smaller group, the bigger group doesn't really call them out. They might tell us, hey, they're not with us. But why are they not going public? And I wonder if that's a part of the thing that maybe as police we could kind of coach them to say, you know, you should be calling out the bad actors because you don't want to be associated with them. You don't want them to appear or to go out and say they're the leaders of this. But we see this more and more. And if you look at like some of these groups on Twitter, right away they're condemning everything. It's like, well, are we educating them? Hey, look at these people weren't actually a part of that group. So I just wonder why we don't see that more.
Yeah, I mean, well, first, I mean, just to the first part of that, I think we're fooling ourselves if we think we're going to educate anybody on Twitter in that space, because
Yeah.
they're there for a reason. It's not to be helpful. Those that are actually operating in that space for those reasons, not everybody, but those in that particular situation. Just to be clear, I think the other piece to that is it's hard because some of these people are actually bullies. And I mean,
Hmm.
people also get scared. And then, I think that is better operated, as we mentioned earlier, is that's where you try to do this through that relationship where let's not put them at risk of calling somebody out publicly that, that other group's going to shame or dox or do anything else. I think that relationship to know that people can actually share that with the police and we can keep them safe and do that. I think we got to be careful not to have them put themselves in harm way because we see it firsthand. If we really circle the wagons, and which we do, and we figure out what is actually going on, it's a small group
Hmm.
that's behind all of this negative rhetoric, but it multiplies when depending on the cause, right? So I think what I don't want to do is put some of our citizens who are there for the right reasons, just because they're hurting and they want to demonstrate or protest, or let's just call it, express their views, and they're doing it, within the rules. Nobody should want them to put themselves in harm's way for the ones that don't. But I think with the relationship, we can help them deal with that, and obviously separate the two entities because that's pretty important. And that's back to where you initially started this. That's what happened at the U of A. It all got separated. There was no students there when we arrived. That's that. Let's be very clear, and that's a university which has students. So
Yeah.
it was certainly not them. That was not that they didn't have some perspective in this and some views in this, but when it comes down to it, that wasn't the group there, and that's just obviously through the process of trying to figure out what's going on there and when to do this. So yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I agree with what you're thinking, but at the same time, there's a consequence to that when we try to get somebody that maybe doesn't have the support or can get a backup or a call to support themselves. These folks attack in many ways, and
Yeah.
generally, most of it starts with social media, and we've seen some bad things happen as a result.
Okay. Kind of moving on to a second topic here, talking about the navigation center. So I've had this discussion with a few other people on here, but I want to get your thoughts on how that's going. talk about some of the successes and then some of the stuff that maybe still has to be done, or things maybe that haven't worked within it,
Yeah.
but that you're looking to change. So, how's it going?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I think the navigation center has been, let's call it the start of a much needed systems approach where decision makers can alleviate some of the problems that some of the people that need the help can get in closer to real time than before. I think when you actually look at what this, now that we're back in winter here, the fact that we had people protesting to keep tents in the cold weather, where we had people burning to death and we had people overdosing other places, I can say we haven't had any of that in those environments since it started last January. Now, why is that? Is it 100% because of the navigation center? No, but is it the navigation center absolutely the first path to start to alleviate that? Yes. I think the other piece, being that now that we've taken down, I think it's over 4,600 structures. And, I think, there's been like 43 or 4,400 visitors in that particular center with all kinds of referrals, employment and financial ID, back to real time. I think there's close to 4,000 IDs that were issued. And that was something that we heard I can't get my ID. Well, it's 2024. Surely we can do that. And thanks to the government for stepping up and doing that in close to real time, which, telling somebody that's struggling that they need to go down to this building or that building next week and get it done isn't going to happen. So we solve that. I think there's close to 11 or 1,200 people that have been referred to housing. There's another 12 or some hundred, I think, that were referred to mental health and addiction services. I think we're close to, almost 300 in our the VODP program that we have in our DMU. Radius services, they've given another 1,300. It's starting to connect services to get the right service to the individual in need, and the approach is based on empathy and accountability.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is what we find there is we've been, not we, but some, let's say, politically motivated, have tried to identify this as a homeless issue. And, I'm not saying there's not homeless people in Edmonton, don't get me wrong, but it's really three distinct issues we're seeing. It's a smaller population. The people on the ground are estimating 200 to 500 people. Lowest end at a given time to highest is
as frequent flyers, kind of like, yeah, okay.
Yes. Well, mental health, they're high mental health needs, high addictions needs, drug psychosis needs. They need a health intervention. So that's the whole premise of the Compassion Intervention Act, which, certainly the Alberta Association of Chiefs of Police has supported. And we just started talking about it at the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and there's a lot of support there. Then you got that middle piece, 12 to 1,500. Again, rough numbers, not trying to name this down to exactly a number, but that basically is that stabilization piece, whether it's bridge healing, bridge housing, whether it's mental health treatment, addictions treatment, maybe it's a job. There's different needs in that compartment, but that's what the recovery system is built on, which I think the province is well on the right path there. It's just they can't build facilities fast enough.
Yeah.
Stabilize that piece. But, when you look at a lot of this growth, whether you go to one of the housing authorities like Savita, who does a lot of the social housing, or, if you look at where's the biggest increase that are taking up some of the shelter space and stuff, a lot of that is immigration. And that, again, is a different solution. Do we have the appropriate plans coming over where people have the financial means to actually, get the opportunity to get a good footing under them? Has it been well planned? Is there a plan coming for them, or is it fend for yourself? I think we know the answers to that. But that, again, is, speed up your building permits, rental subsidies, you use your private sector inventory, there's 4 or 5 options. So all of that compartmentalized, what I'm trying to get to here, you just can't call that homelessness and say we're going to build housing and solve that. It's really 3 different problems. Mm-hmm. And which housing's a part of, like, don't get me wrong, and it's not just about all putting services in a house. It's basically figuring out where that individual is and get them the support and then and the resources they need as close to real time. And that premise starts in the navigation center. Now, building the rest of that system around it is going to be critical to longevity and sustainability. And think we're on a real good path to get there. It's just something that has existed here for years, and it's expedited for a couple of reasons. Back to geopolitics and the inflow of immigration, and no planning around that. Back to what we talk about addictions. Back to what we talk about the impacts of COVID-19. And somewhat transient population in the cities, and where we don't have services in the home communities. So we put a person on the moon, I think it was in the 60s. That was really complex. To me, this issue is big and complex to solve it, but getting 20 or 30% of the system, or people out of the system, is just leadership and having the right people in the room.
Mm-hmm.
That creates momentum, it creates hope. And I think the Navigation Center is the start of that. And that's why I think we're seeing some of the results we are. And how does that play out in the street in real time? Well, with the encampments being down, particularly the downtown area, you were seeing our crime plummet. We're back to before we had the whole defund the movement, 2.5, 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're going back in exactly the same trend we were. But we're also seeing that, now the encampment's down, antisocial behavior is down, crime is down, calls, proactive policing is up 30% in that particular area.
Okay.
And that's a recipe for success, but you can't just do it for a few months and then run to the next thing. You got to stay consistent, and you got to do it right across our city. And that's certainly our intention and our plan. And I think we're in good stead to do that. So we wouldn't have known all this, honestly, if it wasn't for the province and the Navigation Center to actually get us some pretty good data to actually see what it is. Because before that, basically if you're following Twitter, or you're following, some of the folks that have an ideology on that, let's say, you're just running in circles. Because I think now we've got a bit of a plan. Well, we got a real plan, and it doesn't mean it's going to suit everybody's needs, but what it does mean is we're trending positively, and we just need to continue to evolve and build it out.
Yeah, I think it's important to have, you have to find the political will on the front end, and then you have to have the fortitude to continue to push through and try to see some results.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to give it some kind of end date. If something's not working, we look at change. I don't know if I've mentioned, maybe even on the last time we talked, but my experience going out into the encampments and just around the shelters, with the people I've dealt with there, they've said that using the Navigation Center, they like all the resources there. They've used them. I think if I put out, I'm just guessing at a number, but probably around 90% of the people I've talked to have said they've accessed it and have obtained whatever resources they needed. The only consistent issue they had was housing. And kind of as you're saying, it's that's expensive, and it takes time to build. What I'm wondering is, for this Navigation Center, is this fully on the province's plate? Does the city have any say or funding, or where does the responsibility lie for what that thing is doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's provincially funded right now. And, certainly we're partners, and the city is, involved in relation to playing a role of getting people there, and certainly played a big role with the police in, the encampment response. But it's that, let's call it the place to go. And, and when you say housing, I mean, housing, if you look at that data since 2020, 2024, it goes back to understanding that it's the people that you're talking to in GST. Let's be honest, that's not all of the vulnerable population. Some of those people that you're talking to are a different client. And if you look at some of the numbers that were released not that long ago, and I think it was through Homeward Trust, is from 2020 to 2024, the graph overall is going up, but the graph in relation to the people that are using shelters is fairly consistent. It's got a little bit of ebb and flow.
It's not just the GST. Like when I'm doing GST, when I go out and do those the Project Enlightenment,
right?
So we see a lot through there. Yeah,
right. So and then you look at the ones that are living on the street. That number has been fairly consistent. Little bit of ebb and flow, so people aren't pouring out. But when you look at those that are actually using what is called the words that I believe is identified as provisionally accommodated, meaning they're staying somewhere part of the time.
Okay.
That's where all the growth is. And then follow that backwards, as I just said to you, through Savita, a lot of that is immigration.
Okay.
So again, back to the three solutions, you need all three of those. You
Yeah.
can't have one of those just going in the direction. So I don't think anybody ever said, certainly from our police service or for the province or anybody that we worked for in the front line, said the navigation center is the be all end all system that's going to fix all this. It's the entry point to actually find the data, get the people to help in real time. Sometimes it's getting people home. Sometimes it's accommodating the fact that they had their pet. They got some things in relation to that they need to do. But again, by overgeneralizing this just as a housing is part of the issue. It's certainly part of it, but it's really getting that data through that interview to understand what that individual needs to create their success, to get the feet underneath them. And before that, it's just been a free for all. Like, let's have 4,500, 5,000 tents. Let's take 19, 20,000 encampment calls a year, and let's watch people, dying in real time in front of first responders. So that to what we have now is progress. And anybody that doesn't think that is progress, I think has forgot the question.
Yeah. Maybe on that, I'll ask, in my conversation I had with Michael Jans, Councillor Jans. So I did a podcast with him a little while ago and was talking about similar issues where policing we come into the picture long after other systems have failed somebody. So it's kind of right along those lines. I'm wondering if you had the opportunity to listen to the podcast I did with him, and then kind of some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I did. I actually found it quite confusing, to be honest with you. No disrespect. I think, and I'm trying to go off memory because I listened to it when it first came out when I was driving, as I listened to a lot of your podcasts. I mean, the fact that he's saying that number one job for him as, a political is to mobilize, you get people behind a cause. That's a bit frightening, because if that's what it is, that's really could be chaos. I mean, I think, for me, it's to try to get the data and the facts of what people need, and then figure out how I get what they need to actually alleviate or solve the problem, and not to blame others for it.
So kind of operating emotions versus data.
But I mean, I'm just going to be honest, because the same individuals called me racist. The same individuals called us pigs, and the same individual wanted decrim and safe supply. The same individual was part of the movement to take us out of schools. And none of those, even now after two studies, with less than 4% supporting that, you can move and motivate and do that way too soon without knowing what you're trying to accomplish. So those are the things that I found, and I could go on. There's quite a few of those. It's a regular occurrence. And I mean, that's his prerogative. It's not something that, if that's what he wants to do, it's not saying it's against the law, but it's what I am saying is it sometimes could, maybe lead some things in the wrong direction. And that type of stuff, that if I go out and do that, it's going to create chaos.
Yeah.
And I don't try to do that. I'm trying to focus, and our police service is trying to focus on community safety. He obviously went on to talk about how we deploy resources. I mean, talked about how many people we have in management. I mean, you compare that. I mean, that's been done 3 times with the city, and we're really low in those spaces. And yes, we've changed deployment, and yes, we're moving to online reporting, and yes, you look at all those things. But yeah, I just found it hard to follow. Hopefully that makes sense. But honest to goodness, I mean, the same individual said all those things about me, and when I went up and shook his hand, he didn't know who I was. So that was kind of a bit of a shocker. And again, each to his own opinion. If he has his opinion, doesn't mean I have to subscribe to it, I guess is what I say. But what I can differentiate is what I'm trying to do in relation to a police service and community safety. And I think, obviously we're coming at it from different angles, and, that's his choice, and my choice is mine. So I leave it. I guess I'm not going to get into blaming, because there's enough of that to go around.
Yeah, definitely different styles in leading. So maybe we'll talk about retirement. So you're moving into different job, I guess. I'm hoping I can get out of you maybe where you're going. uh,
Yeah.
so,
Well, there's put it this way, there's 5 or 6 things out there, and A, I've heard of going back to Saskatchewan to do something. B, I've heard I'm running the provincial or the police complaint system. I'm going to the province. I'm
mhm.
running from here. I'm running the provincial police service. What I'll tell you is there's 7 things out there, and only one of them are right. I think first and foremost, what I want to say on this program is how proud I am of the men and women of this organization. And job for me, right up until I leave, is to run this police service and continue to evolve this police service. And that's my commitment. So, that'll get announced in due course. It's not my focus right now. My focus is, we've got a lot of things on our plate. We've got some of the potentially best crime results going right now that we've seen in a long time. And I think we really have seen a really good progress with the stabilization of the funding formula, some of the investments that we made in your area with an additional team.
Yeah.
Gun crime down 46%. I mean, it doesn't happen by accident. It's empathy, accountability, the stuff that we mentioned, the encampments, obviously that's coming down. We've got some of our major files that we've laid some significant charges in arsons, the protest demonstrations, all of those things that being an only 24/7 operation that exists, we continue to do. So that's my focus up until then. I will say that probably something here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, it's not that I'm trying to hold people at bay or stuff. It's not always my decision to make either. So it's just right now, it's just not the right time to make a decision. It's the focus on the job at hand, and hopefully people respect that. But that's kind of where I am now.
Well, I guess we'll have to start the betting pools where you end up.
I'm sure there is that. I've heard there's some people out there on social media that are buying my domain names.
Oh, really?
For that I'm for mayor. I mean, people are just a bit out of control, honestly. That's probably not some of my biggest fans though either. So.
Yeah. I hope whoever is in the seat next likes the podcast, though. I hope they don't shut me down.
Yeah. We're in good shape. We're in good shape internally. We've got lots of talent here. Not only what you're doing in the podcast is stuff that everybody appreciates, but those that know you and the work that you do for our police organization is nothing, certainly, but very good. And, so good on you for being able to balance that plus a family. I think it speaks volumes to your character as well.
I appreciate the words. I do want to take a page out of Dr. Gad Sad, some of his podcasts, what he asks people on there. So for you, any regrets either due to action or inaction? So action, like decisions you made that you're like, oh, maybe I could take that back. I wouldn't have done it that way. Or inaction, whether you think you should have made a decision or, you had the opportunity to do something, but you didn't. Do you have any kind of regrets?
I'm not one that lives in a regret thing, because I think you can always find something to think. Look, there are a couple things that I would say bother me. I always think of Travis and Brett, and I always wonder if there's anything that, as a leadership team, which obviously ends with me, is there anything that we could have did, earlier on, that would have prevented something like that? I mean, that's your worst call ever. And I mean,
yeah,
being in the emergency room with the family and my deputy Dirko, and seeing the devastation there, you don't forget that stuff. So you always wonder, did I miss something? And I'll always have that. It's part of sitting in this role. I think, that would probably be my biggest thing. I'm not sure there's something I could have did to change, but it doesn't mean you don't think about it.
Yeah.
In fact, it had. I think this whole, since this council has been in the last one, and, some of the, how would I say it? It's almost to the point where it's just been toxic and somewhat abusive to our commission, that I should have probably stepped in. and I say that only because I was a deputy minister in charge of this stuff, and so I know what is the lane and what's good governance and what isn't. I don't say it because I'm this so-called chief of police that knows better than anybody else. But those volunteers and what they did to keep our organization strong, some pretty accusatory things and things in the media and accusations in social media by actually some professional people and politicians. That's not okay. Like this is an extremely diverse commission that, they've got skill sets, accountants, lawyers, doctors, lived experience, members of the LGBTQ2S plus community. I mean, they're diverse, more diverse than I've ever seen, actually. And I've been around policing a long time. So could I have done or, reduced that or tried to change that? I don't know. I should have probably jumped in and said something earlier and, but it's not right. I mean, it's just not right to have to go through that.
So would this be along the lines, like you had mentioned in your statement that when you're retiring, like there were some things said about you that were hurtful that have had an impact on you. Is this along the same lines as that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I even said that there that in my media interview that I feel that maybe I should have, ultimately I have the ability as a chief of police to go to the province or somebody for a review on somebody this if I feel, and
Okay.
just you don't jump to those things quickly because it doesn't, it's not the best way to deal with it. But sometimes I hold it that maybe I should have. But that's something that I obviously deal with and have to do it. I'm not sure it's a right or wrong answer, but I do feel watching the toll and the impact of people leaving. It's not hard for me to figure out that there's been an impact, and that shouldn't be on a volunteer board. But again, I don't want to beleaguer this too much. But is there other things? There's always things that you think, and I mean, I let some of the CSWB stuff maybe grow organically, and I think it's finally rooted. It's funny to get some of our own people to think that we weren't going back to the way policing was 10 years ago after George Floyd and COVID. It's good that it happened organically and now it's thing, but pretty much most police services across the country have looked at what we've done and they've adopted it and they've adopted it because you need to work on both ends of the spectrum of policing. You're a 24/7 organization. You're going to be called to these things either, but it's those partnerships that we have now in our community, whether it be Radius Health, you can, whether it's taking people to shelter and we're playing a role on helping them make their environment safe, or, working with CASA on the youth, or, working with, some of the partners we have. I think we really evolved exponentially on that. But it's nice that it's now kind of, how would I say it? It's solid now, even though not everybody thinks that it does advantage it. The only reason they don't think is because they haven't looked far enough to see the impact it's having. And that's why our crime rate's coming down, because we're pulling it down on both ends. We've got action on the guns, we've got actions on the major investigations, we've got actions on the homicides. We're handling in the middle, we're handling protests and demonstrations like we've never seen it before. Our calls for service, a big thing was on call times. I mean, and one of the counselors wrote a blog on this apparently, and I've only seen part of it, but I mean, we decided to move away from average response times for a reason.
Yeah.
Is we want to know on priority ones of why we weren't there yesterday. And we want to know, like most police services do, we don't want to know on average response time, because average response time sets false expectations. When it gets to priority 4s and 5s, we got to look at how we deliver that service from customer service. Can we do that online? Can we do it digitally? Can we make contact?
Okay.
Better customer service? And we're starting to do a lot of that stuff. But going back to just say measuring average response times, I mean, everything on average is not conducive to being the best police service in the country. It's conducive to being an average police service, which means that you don't take into effect traffic, how many people you have. You don't take into consideration construction, because all of those
Yeah,
things lots of times. And
especially in Edmonton.
right, I want to know why on those real priorities where people need us and they need us now, could we have been there quicker? And that's something that our folks evaluate and look at consistently. So yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit off topic here, but I think that the whole point is there's always things perhaps you regret, but the best thing about this whole thing for me has been our people. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that we don't hold our people accountable. When we mess up, we got to own it, and I think I've been really consistent on that. I think our dispute resolution that we use in discipline, moving from just trying to take pay to making them do community service work and things in relation that actually are meaningful to our community, with our community,
Yep.
on that whole restorative approach has really worked well. And it's actually helped us build a relationship with our community. So there's really so many of those things that we've managed to do that, we don't talk about it enough probably. And, when I say we, I don't think I did all that. And I'm the first to tell you, like, you can set a direction and ask for what you want, but it takes good people to take things to the ground. And I think that's where we shine as an organization.
Last thing for you, what are you going to tell the next chief, the incoming person? So this is the handoff, Biden and Trump. What are
Yeah,
you giving to the next person?
bad comparison. Bad comparison.
It's
Hopefully,
just
on
timely.
either accord. Let's just do that. I think I would hope they stay the course, but take it to another level. Like, you know what I mean? It's make sure it's like anything. And I think I said this when I first came in here. As a person that, used to own A&Ws, don't mess with the team burger, the onion rings, or the root beer, but everything else is up for interpretation and change. Right? Uh, Make sure you keep your staples strong, keep your lane strong, keep your partners strong, and focus on progression and evolution, and not on the rear view mirror by some of the stuff that you see in the media, our social media in particular. I think our media, in fairness to them, our mainstream media have been really good. They've asked tough questions, but they've been really good. And I think I certainly been very appreciative of some of the questions that they get into. But I think we gotta write our own script in relation to what our community needs, and we can never lose touch. For a period, our community, through both defund and COVID, our community went silent. It wasn't because that's who they are. It was because they were fatigued and they're tired and they're dealing with their own stuff as the world was upside down. But I think it's always important that we keep the community at the center of this, because that's where we get our transparency and that's where we get our legitimacy.
Mhm.
Contrary to some academics, it's how we, at least it's the relationship with the community that really is taking this to a next level. So I would strongly hope that the next person that does this job doesn't lose sight of that, because I think we have it in spades right now, and it's showing in so many different parts of what we actually do. And yeah, I mean, we're in good shape. We got talent in this organization. I mean, ultimately, I don't make the decision, but I honestly think this organization has went outside for, what is it, the last 5 chiefs, including myself, and
Mhm.
I don't think there's any need to go outside. I think there's inside options without bench depth that's coming up and is strong, and that I'd put somebody that's on both boards and been around policing a long time and pretty much know every police service in the country. I like what we have here.
Awesome. Well, this kind of brings us to the end of our time. I kept you a bit over time, so I appreciate you hanging around. I want to say thank you for being on the show, and definitely have to stay in touch. So thank you for your service, and we will definitely talk again.
Thanks, Nathan. Again, muchly appreciated. And again, my last word is just thanking the people that I've had the fortune to work with, but I also want to remind them I'm still here till the end of February. So there's still lots of work to do. So as always, I appreciate your time, and having the ability just to talk, with no notes, but just from the hip. So thanks very much.
Yeah. I'll remind everybody just to subscribe, follow, share The Quiet Professional, and thanks for joining us.